Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. We have Gary Austin on the line. He's the CEO of OneCare, and he is also an author, I'm proud to announce, in one of our upcoming Mission Matters book releases. Gary, hey, just wanted to say, first off, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, Gary. So you got me all fired up this morning. I know you're just coming back from a conference. Some big developments there, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And we're of course going to talk about the book as well. And I want to go into the OneCare model and really how you're helping families and caregivers, and really just disrupting the healthcare system in many ways, in a good way, by the way. But before we do that, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Gary, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Gary, what mission matters to you?
We really try to help family members and patients to have the tools to manage the care that happens in the home when there's been a new diagnosis and they're being discharged from a hospital, for example, and to simplify, ease the job, give them all the tools they need, and help them through that journey, so that they're comfortable and competent to do what is really being required of them.
Great, and we'll go further into the model and exactly how you're doing that. But let's start a little bit earlier in your career. Like, how did you get into healthcare and into this space?
Well, I started with a company called Clearwave. So I developed the first patient self-check-in kiosk for healthcare, and that happened because when I felt like I was possibly having a heart attack, and so I went to an urgent care to get checked out, and they weren't able to determine for sure that I wasn't, so they called an ambulance, sent me to a hospital, and I filled out a clipboard of paper at the urgent care, and I filled out a clipboard for the ambulance. And when I got to the hospital, I filled out a clipboard, and 3 or 4 more after I got there. And I was like, what are you doing with all this paperwork? Where's all this going? Why am I still filling out paperwork? And because it was all different vendors that were providing care. They were subcontractors to the hospital in one way or another. And I have a credit card background, and I was thinking, well, I can take a credit card in my wallet, and I can go anywhere in the world and I can buy something, and they all get their money.
Yeah.
You worry about getting your money. Why can't you do something more like what the credit card industry does, instead of having somebody fill out all this paperwork to get paid? And so anyway, from that, having the credit card background, I thought, well, look, there's got to be a better way. So we started Clearwave, which is basically a way to take your clipboard information and store it in the cloud. And then at a kiosk, you scan the card, put in a 4-digit PIN, and it takes all that information, provides it to the doctor or the hospital electronically, so that no one has to read it, no one has to key it in. And then it also did real-time insurance eligibility verification. So it improved workflow, cash flow, and patient satisfaction. So I got into healthcare that way. But later, in starting OneCare, it was because my wife and I had 6 children, and our oldest son got squamous cell sinus cancer, and we became the caregivers. Not just us, but our whole family. So my son's wife had a nursing degree, and she never practiced to be a nurse, but she did go to nursing school and was a highly competent caregiver. Yeah. But she also had 3 small children. And so that changes the dynamic a little bit. So my son had a very rigorous care regimen, and so it took our whole family really to be able to try to keep everything going that needed to be done for my son. And we got very poor instructions and on what to do and how to do it. So I started looking, because of my experience with Clearwave. I thought, maybe someone has put together some kind of program for families to manage patients at home. and we couldn't find anything. So
Wow.
ultimately started Clearwave. And so we didn't get this put together in time to be of value to my son, Adam.
Mm.
But in fact, after 6 months of treatment, he was determined to be cancer free. But on the 90-day checkup, he was told that he had 2 weeks to live.
Mm.
And he died in my arms at his house 2 weeks later.
Mm.
And so he did all the heroics that could be done, but it still wasn't enough. And we learned a lot
Yeah.
going through that process. And we felt like, it didn't have to be as hard as it was
Mm.
to manage all that. And so we started OneCare so that we could try to help other people have a better experience
Mhm.
than that, and really have all the tools they need, and the training and the education and
Mm.
the devices and connectivity to each other. So that's what we built at OneCare is basically the healthcare system for the
Mhm.
home.
So, Gary, I don't want to assume that everybody knows kind of like what that journey looks like from healthcare. So after maybe a diagnosis or something happens, and then the patient then is given back to the family and for care, right? For day-to-day care.
Yes.
So, and because you don't really know until it happens to you, right? Like, so
Right.
for those maybe that it hasn't happened to, some can relate to what you just mentioned, your story, some can't. So maybe just give us a little bit of kind of a feel for what that user journey looks like. So high level. So, somebody's diagnosed, they're treated in a hospital. What happens next?
So
Traditionally, I should say.
before you go home from the hospital, you'll meet with a discharge manager. Their job is to make sure that you understand the condition that you have
Mhm.
and how to manage that condition when you get home.
Yeah.
And they have a stack of papers that they'll go over with you, and it sort of sounds like the talk fast guy on the commercials. How fast can I say this, and
The
how
auto guy, right?
yeah, can I get you out the door? And not because they're being careless, it's just they
Yeah,
have so many people to manage
of
this
course.
fashion, and they don't have the time to follow up with you. The discharge manager, it's not their job. Their job is to give you the instructions and send you
Mhm.
home. So but what the discharge instructions
Mhm.
give you your responsibility to do
Mhm.
is really where OneCare comes in, and or if you're already
Yeah.
a person who's got a diagnosis, your doctor can prescribe OneCare, um, so that you have the tools and the training and the connectivity that you need to
Yeah.
make that job easier at home. So fortunately now Medicare
Mm.
covers everything that we do, so
Yeah.
that there's not a cost to the patient, or that insurance covers
Yeah.
it. But it's basically medication management,
Mhm.
follow-up visits. Usually you need to have a follow-up visit with your doctor 7 days after discharge.
Mm.
There's dietary issues, either recommendations or restrictions.
Mhm.
There's activity instructions. You should maintain a certain level of activity
Mhm.
because your body needs that.
Mhm.
Um, the uh, vital sign readings. So
Yeah.
if you have type 2 diabetes and you're an insulin requiring diabetic, you need to
Mhm.
check your blood sugar multiple times a day.
Mhm.
If you have hypertension and you have hypertensive crises, you need to be checking your blood pressure on a regular basis. Congestive heart failure, you need to step on a scale. You need to take your diuretic, so that you maintain healthy lungs because otherwise your lungs collect with fluid, particularly when you have salty foods. So depending on the diagnosis, there's many different things. With our
Yeah.
son, he was being fed through a peg tube because he was getting radiation treatment. Um,
Mm.
it was squamous cell sinus cancer, so the tumor was located in this area, but it also invaded his jaw, and so when you were getting this radiation, it's going basically in this direction.
Mhm.
It was getting his eye, his jaw, his tongue, and his esophagus
Mhm.
were being radiated. And so after a few treatments, he was no longer able to swallow. So
Mm.
in a peg tube, so you have to prepare a meal so that can then be inserted into the peg tube for feeding. And there are many other things, trips to the radiologist for those radiation treatments, five days a week for 6 weeks, and then chemotherapy, and then you get infections and all these other kinds of things from what this is doing to your body. And so it's just a lot of medications, a lot of cleaning the peg tube and the port, and special meal preparation. So many things. I mean, it really is a lot. The trips to the radiologist was more than 4 hours each day, 5 days a week. We were trying to organize and take turns doing things, so everybody wanted to participate in our family. We had a large family, and it's just that we had plenty of help. It's just making sure that the person knew what to do, how to do it, and when they were available to do it, and try to usually coordinate all that. And then what if you get abnormal readings? Then what do you do?
Right.
Our program really addresses all of these things so that, first of all, they're trained on a fluency-based learning management system, so they know perfectly what to do. We give them little bits of information at a time, and then we quiz them on that. And so it's interesting and engaging to learn how to be the caregiver. And then once you take the quiz, you have to score 100 on the test to get certified. So we certify caregivers. So it's not just we get volunteers. We get volunteers that are then trained and certified, and they know it perfectly. So this is a whole new category of caregiver that we're creating with this platform. And once you're a caregiver for someone, you're doing it because you love the person or you care about them, you want to help. But there's something different that happens when you also perfectly know how to do it.
Yeah.
There's a level of confidence, and it relieves stress, and it relieves anxiety and worry. Yeah. So, I mean, because you know what to do perfectly. And so it's a whole new ball game. It changes the environment in the home completely to be less like a place where the wheels fall off again, to more like a care center. And the patient's more comfortable and more confident and less stressed because they're getting competent, excellent care.
And so obviously there's varying levels of, illness or conditions that somebody that uses OneCare can participate. So I guess to use another example, so could this be used as something for some, in your example, of course, you had a whole team. I mean, this is a very, serious situation, as are all healthcare conditions. But is this something that can also be used for, let's just say, a little bit like more minor treatments? Like, let's say somebody has, they have to take their medicine, like you need help reminding grandma to take their medicine or things like that, where there's maybe one caregiver or two. I mean, can it be used for things like that as well?
Absolutely. We remind the patient throughout the day, every day, on time, every time, for every task.
Yeah.
And they've already been trained and certified.
So it's highly dynamic, it sounds like.
Very, very dynamic and interactive. So, and then we time everything. So there's a certain amount of time that you get to do that task for it to be done, what we call on time. And if it goes past that point, then we contact the caregivers connected to the patient, say, hey, Gary didn't take his meds, or grandma didn't take her meds. So then they will contact grandma, call her on the phone or text her, or however she wants to be communicated with, because they'll know, and communicate with grandma and say, hey, grandma, I've been doing great with keeping up with your meds, but I noticed you didn't take those this morning. Please go ahead and take those meds and let me know that you've done that, so we know you're okay. So we give them instructions on not only they're late doing something or they miss something, we also notify them if a reading's abnormal, and if there's a protocol the doctors prescribe for getting it back to normal, then they'll know perfectly how to administer that protocol. So, and it could be something very simple, as you said, like taking meds, but it could be someone needs to take their insulin, someone needs to take their diuretic, and so and a family member can do that. You don't have to be a nurse to remind the person, your reading's abnormal. Do you know the formula for your insulin? Yes. What is that? And confirm that with them, and and then follow up to make sure that is now back to normal. They'll have to retest. So this is all a protocol that we build into the platform, so the family members can help and do it with excellence.
And why I think this is so, I mean, it's a genius concept, but why I think it's so disruptive in healthcare as well is that if you look at how, let's just say less severe medical conditions turn into, they spiral into other things. I guess let's just stick with maybe the diabetes kind of example, right? So maybe it starts out with you need to take a pill. And if you take that pill or, alter your diet or do things, then maybe you don't have to take that pill at some point, right? Or maybe your diabetes kind of levels out. So you're okay. But if you don't take it, maybe it progresses, then it goes further. And then you have to take insulin. Then maybe you have, unfortunately, you're not doing that. And then maybe you're losing, you're losing a limb. I mean, and then it spirals and it goes worse and worse and worse. So it seems to me like if somebody can be if they can be better serviced and helped along the way, especially in the beginning, like the healthcare system wins from cost perspective, the patient wins from better quality of life. Obviously, nobody, in my example, nobody wants to lose a limb, right? The families win as well because they feel empowered, and their loved one ideally has a better quality of life and has a better life just in general, and better family and home dynamic. I mean, am I off on this and kind of how the implications of what this could be?
It's spot on. The other aspect about this is we train the patient and the family on the science of behavior, because when you get a diagnosis, regardless of the diagnosis, you are going to have behaviors that have to change without a doubt. And failure to change those behaviors is going to cause your condition to worsen.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have other issues, just like you mentioned. It can escalate into something much worse. However, the family being trained and certified on this, not only, you have the job anyway.
Right.
If you're putting in the time, you're doing the things, but if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how to shape the patient's behavior, because we teach you how to do that, it just be very frustrating and discouraging for not only the patient, but also the caregiver. So our business partner, Aubrey Daniels, who's recognized as one of the world's leading authorities on the science of behavior, has provided the training and the tools that we give to the patient and the family. They're world renowned, and the Fortune 500 companies in the Global 2000, and they're in 60 foreign countries. And it's excellent, very proven technologies that is behavior science based. He says that his wife will talk to him about something, and that she wants him to do, and she'll say, "Aubrey, how many more times do I have to tell you?" And he says, "Well, at least one more." So, but we teach the behavior science about how do you get the patient to shape the behavior that needs to be shaped, and you do it through positive reinforcement. So you find positive ways to encourage them to do things to where they're not going to be dreading the phone call when it comes. And like, it's not going to be nagging. It's going to be something kind and encouraging. So the other dynamic that we found that happens is that with caregivers, you're doing the job of a caregiver because it's your job, and because you love the person and you care for them. But if you can't do it well, it's frustrating, and teaching them how to do it perfectly makes the job of a caregiver a whole different kind of a job, because you know that you're able to help, and you know that you can make a difference and potentially prevent some avoidable episodes of care, a hospitalization. You could prevent a hospitalization that otherwise would have happened because of the knowledge and the training and the tools that we give you. So it's a different dynamic altogether.
Yeah. And going back to the behavioral side, I'm definitely, Gary, not going to speak above my level of knowledge in this, but I'm just going to use the simple example that I know. And that is, the reason why many people like to make lists is so they can check something off of it. They want to feel proficient. You want to feel the worth of doing something good and getting something done. So I can only imagine what that would translate to when it comes to helping grandma or helping mom or helping dad or helping your child, right? And to know that you're doing doing it right, and that this matters, and that you can be literally changing their life depending on the situation. To me, it's almost like, it's kind of almost like we talk about gamification in the, in the sense of like the tech side, but it's almost like gamification in terms of like human psychology and how we all want to feel, needed and connected and part of something. So what better than being part of helping a loved one, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the gamification comes in with our adherence scoring
Mm.
technology. So there's a number of tasks that the patient needs to do every day. And so every time they do a task, there's a progress bar, and the progress bar's got hash marks on it, one for each task. And if you do it on time, the little hash mark fills in green. If you do it late, it's yellow, and if you miss it, it's red. And every time it moves, the task, you complete a task, the hash mark moves, and you have a calculator that's increasing your score. The goal is to get, if you do them all on time, you get 100% for the day. Well, we shared this with underwriters and actuaries about the adherence scoring mechanism, and they said you're actually able to calculate the risk of having a preventable episode of care by the percent of the things that the person does on time prescribed by their doctor every day. Right now, insurance companies use last year's claims data to do that. And we have a way to manage risk that's actionable on a daily basis. And they said, when this gets in the hands of major insurance payers, this is how all health plans are going to be underwritten in the future. They're going to be underwritten in real time based on an adherence score.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're objectively capturing all the data. It's coming out of a medical device into the cloud. The patient's not interpreting it or entering it or transposing numbers or things like that. So it's objective data. So
it seems so obvious, and it seems like that's where you'd have to go, and beyond the context of this conversation, but obviously a lot of things have to happen for that to happen, and to get people to participate, and there's a ton of different ways I'm sure that you've thought of, and they're working on to do it. But I want to jump around a bit here for a minute, and I want to talk a little bit more about maybe some of the other technology and things that you have going on just in general. So I know the OneCare Gateway is one of them. Maybe let's start there.
Sure. So a number of patients there's a large population of patients that have chronic conditions that need to be remotely managed, but they are not tech savvy, or they're actually technology averse, and they're not able to manage and understand a smartphone or a tablet. So we have a gateway device that looks like a hockey puck. And it plugs in the wall. There's no buttons. There's no screens. You can't interact with it other than using your medical device. So we'll message the person. They may have their phone might be a phone that plugs into the wall.
Yeah,
it sits beside the bedside table, right? And so we'll call them. The system, we have a voice automation system that'll actually call them on the phone when it's time for them to take their meds or check their vital signs. And then when they do that, the device starts transmitting the reading, and the gateway automatically pairs with that device, collects the data, and sends it to the OneCare cloud, interprets it, and if it's actionable, it'll contact the patient or ultimately a clinical caregiver, depending on what how severe or how abnormal the value is. So this gateway is really unbreakable as long as it has power. You're in business. It's a cellular transmitter to the cloud, so you don't even have to have Wi-Fi. We can just plug this in the wall and it just works. And the patient simply has to use their medical device normally once they get the message to do it. So, and if your Bluetooth connection or a software update breaks the connection between the medical device and the gateway, doesn't matter, because every time you use the device, it auto pairs, auto connects, and auto transmits. So it's pretty much bulletproof. So
so it really is just plug it in, and and there's nothing. There's not even buttons on it. You said, right?
Yeah, there's no setup at all.
Wow.
So we believe we have the only gateway device of that type on the market. It can even be used in close quarters, like in a senior living facility,
Mhm.
without Bluetooth interference, which other gateway devices can have.
Mm.
So we've really got some very advanced technology. So it's FDA approved, it's
Mhm.
FCC approved, and it's cellular network approved. And we won the National Science Foundation award for this gateway when COVID happened, because they wanted a low-cost device to send home with patients that were not going to be put on vents in the hospital. They were going to be treated at home. OneCare won the award for the gateway.
Mm. It's great. It's amazing. One of the other things that you mentioned was maybe some of the libraries and the program libraries. I want to go a little bit deeper into that and what that entails. Tell us a little bit more about the libraries.
So the programs are assessments,
Mhm.
tasks, and education.
Mhm.
That's what a program is. And in our program libraries, we have programs for many disease states. So congestive heart failure, COPD, asthma, coronary artery disease, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, low back pain, falls with fractures, depression, many others. The the programs are complete with assessments, like how are you feeling today, things that you're not measuring with the device. The tasks are the device measurements, and then education, completing the courses. So the courses are broken into chapters, and each chapter has a quiz at the end. That's and there's 10 or 12 chapters in a course, and there's 10 or 12 questions in a chapter quiz.
Mhm.
And it's delivered on the app or on the web. That you can use your computer. Basically anything with a web browser can access it,
Mm.
and the patient and the family members can connect and access these education libraries. So it will deliver the content in either video, audio, text, graphics, or combination thereof.
Mm.
And it's just a little bit of content at a time. If you were reading it, it would be a page or maybe two at the most. And then you start the quiz. And with the quiz, it's a fluency based learning management system, and the way that works is kind of like the way a video game plays.
Mhm.
So if you play a video game, normally you're not going to win the level the first time you play the game, because you don't really know what's coming. So but it's okay if you get killed, you just start the game over
Right.
again, get another crack at it, and you do it as many times as it takes you to beat the level.
Mhm.
So that's basically how the learning management system in OneCare works. So you're not killing aliens or anything. You're just
Mm.
answering questions, but it reorders and restates the question and resubmits it, so
Mm.
that you don't just remember a sequence of truths and falses or whatever. You're really learning the content, and
Mm.
then once you complete the course, you really do perfectly know the content and what to do. And because we deliver it this way, the fluency-based learning is 5 times more effective at getting the
Mm.
person to truly understand the content, and you remember it 5 times longer. So it's a much better way of doing it. We
Mm.
don't know anyone in healthcare that's training patients or caregivers like this.
Mm.
So that's a new model of care. There are certainly fluency-based learning management systems
Mhm.
are widely used in commerce and commercial applications and in education, but not in healthcare for some reason.
Mm. So, Gary, I do want to spend also a little bit of time on the upcoming book. So, for everybody watching this or listening to this in their car, intentionally, we're not going too far into the book today. The reason why we're not is because we will be bringing Gary on for a follow-up interview. So, let's call it part 2 of the series when the book is actually live. And then we will do a deep dive into Gary's writing and his thoughts around, what he's presenting in the book. But today, Gary, just to get a high level, just a flavor, tell us a little bit more about maybe some of the ideas you plan to propose in the upcoming book release.
Well, one I did allude to with behavior-based health plan design. I think that it's a way that people can use their healthy behaviors as a currency to buy down the cost of health plans, and I think it will prevent avoidable episodes of care. It'll drive down the cost of health care, and there's a lot of margin in there. that could be absorbed and taken out of the healthcare equation just because people are have better health literacy and better tools to manage it with. The But the other aspect of it is that families become more functional through the behavior science training. It ends up being a lot less frustration, a lot less nagging, and things like that go on, and it's easier to help someone do something when you're giving them positive reinforcement and you're trained on how to do that. One of the patients that we had was a person who was legally blind, 80-year-old female who lived alone and had stage 4 congestive heart failure, and she had almost $1 million in healthcare expenses from 15 hospitalizations a prior year.
Wow!
And she's been on the OneCare platform for more than a year now, and has not had a hospitalization since she came on. We got a letter from the her nurse, the president of the nursing company that was managing her, about this because it was such a dramatic change. But the non-technical, non-scientific values that have come out of some of the relationships around the patient and the family members on the OneCare platform are that when you are confident and you know that what to do and how to do it, and the patient knows that, and they're working together, and you're taking on this responsibility, but it's a different thing entirely. The job that you're doing now is not, how do I figure this out? What am I going to do if this happens or that happens? And I don't know, so it goes from that to being, I know what to do. and it's so much a different experience when you know that you really can help and you really can prevent problems from happening. The other thing is a lot of people that haven't experienced OneCare look at the job of being a caregiver as something that's like terrible.
Yeah.
Like it's the never-ending job. I mean, it's something that if you're the primary caregiver, you're doing this every day. There's responsibility all day. Not a lot of days off or holidays. 2 weeks of vacation from that. So, but when you do know and you're confident doing this, and you're spending the time, there's been a lot of conversations that happen. There's the relationship part of this. It is really becomes a more enriching thing when you eliminate the stress and the drudgery, because a lot of the stuff with OneCare we just automate. So it's things we actually don't even have to do at all because it's automated. So we take some of the drudgery and some of the routine away, and it gets down to just the thing. Okay, so now I'm going to be spending time with this person, helping them with their care, and I know what I'm doing is helping. And there is something about that kind of quality time spent that ends up having a secondary value that is, it's appreciated. It's you can really focus more on providing care and showing love to that person because you're not stressed out about all the technical issues and the medical and clinical and the scheduling. So it's a different dynamic altogether.
Man, it's just a great story, Gary. And again, one that I'm glad to bring to my audience, not just through this interview, but also when we get the book out and get the book published as well. I mean, I'm excited to get that done so we can spread this knowledge, right? This knowledge is important and to me and I think to many others out there. And I think it has the ability to help improve the lives of patients, which is ultimately what you're trying to do. So I just want to say, first off, thank you again for coming on the show. I know you got a lot of things going on. What's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for OneCare?
We're going to be rolling this out with medical practices that will provide this to their patients as extra support for their chronic conditions, and through remote patient monitoring and chronic care management reimbursements. We'll be working with health plans to design behavior-based health programs, and we will provide the the educational tools as part of the enrollment into health plans with employers, where so many claims happen that are unnecessary costs for the employer and the employee because you just didn't utilize the benefits correctly. So we're even going to be able to provide the learning management system for how do I use my health plan benefits so that I save time and money. So these are other things that we're going to be utilizing the platform for in the future.
It's awesome. If somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about OneCare, what's the best way for them to do that?
Go to OneCare.me is our website, and on there's a link at info@OneCare.me, or you can just email info@OneCare.me, and we will respond to your informational requests or answer your questions.
Fantastic. And we'll be sure to put all that information into the show notes so that you can, the audience can just click on the links and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time listening to a Mission Matters episode or engaging with the platform, we're all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission, why they do what they do, how they're doing it, and really how we can all learn and benefit from that information so we all grow together. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or engaging to you, hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Gary, again, looking forward to our next interview together when we bring you back on when the book is launched. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you. Take care.